Today's the day that we set up auto crafting within Applied Energistics. Now, I have covered auto crafting quite a bit throughout series, and this one is going to be very similar. I'm just going to essentially set up the basic for right now, but we do have access to Extended AE as I showed last episode. And this is going to be very helpful as we are able to transfer channels wirelessly now because of that. And we're also able to process things quite effectively like patterns and things like that, and we won't need inscriber towers. This is all very, very nice, but of course, you're here to see how it actually looks when it's built. Now, the main goals for today are to get inscribers automated, a couple of random things auto-crafted, like the ability to make more of these things that we're going to be working with today, and also get processing set up for smelting. I mean, that would be very, very nice. I also want to do a little bit of exploring, but we'll get to that after we get the auto crafting up and running. So speaking of auto crafting and getting it set up with Applied Energistics, the way we're going to do this is by using a few things. We're going to use some pattern providers, molecular assemblers. We're also going to use some crafting storages and some co-processing units. That's sort of the main thing that we need outside of a pattern encoding terminal and a pattern access terminal. These we're going to get into later. But for right now, we're really just going to need these 4 different things. Now, you can choose whatever size you want for the crafting storages. For now, I went ahead and made 16Ks. Those are pretty good. And then you can, of course, upgrade them as you sort of progress along. But for getting started, this is going to be more than enough. So I'm going to go ahead and place these down and kind of explain exactly what these computers or these these are crafting CPU units are used for. Essentially, whenever you request a craft, the craft needs to be stored somewhere. So where it gets stored is inside of the crafting storages. And you can have more than one crafting storages on one of these CPUs. Now, these use one channel. Each one of these are going to use one channel, but I recommend having more than one of them so that way you can have multiple crafting operations happening at one time. So if you want to craft something, you hit the craft button, it'll then craft all of that. If you want to go then craft another new thing, you can do that, and I can do it up to 4 times because I have 4 of them here. And you can have different crafting operations happening simultaneously. Now, the co-processing units, these are a little bit different, and these actually interact with the molecular assemblers. By default, we get like 1, I do believe, like an innate 1 molecular assembler usage, but you can see right here, this is attached to 2 molecular assemblers. By default, it can interact with 1 of them, and it can like craft simultaneously with 1. But if I add another one, then it can craft with this one. I add 2, now it can craft with another one on the storage. And then if I add 3, it can now interact with 4 sides. And the reason I like to set them up like this is because it's super cheap. And the way that I like to set up my auto crafting pattern provider towers, and I call them towers because I set them up very much like this. Now in the book, it used to be back in 120.1 that this was the example given to set it up like this. And I still think this is this is a very nice way of setting it up very early on. But what I will say is, yes, of course, you can add more assemblers like this all along the sides. And what actually uses the channels are the pattern providers. However, I will say that it is a whole lot more clustered whenever you do it like this. But yes, it will be more optimal, but you are going to need more co-processing units in order to do this. Because you can see right here, at any given moment, this one being the one that has the most connected to it, at any given moment, there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 connected in this tower, meaning that 3 of these will allow any side of these to work. And then these corner pieces, these are a little bit more limited where they only have 3 connected to them. But yeah, like I said, I really like the nice clean look over how much faster, honestly, it's going to be to do some crafting. Later on, we might expand these and move them, but Extended AE really kind of makes that kind of moot. So not as important. And I'm going to be setting up 2 of these so that way I have access to a lot of pattern storage. Because as of right now, these only hold 9 crafting patterns per pattern provider, and I only have 16 at the moment. And we'll probably hit that cap. But by the time we do, we can upgrade these to an extended version. And extended is very, very nice, giving us tons and tons of room for crafting patterns, more than we'll probably ever need through this whole playthrough. Now to connect this up, what I am utilizing is the thing we set up last episode. We have our yourself an ME wireless connector from Extended AE. This is connected to a face of the controller, and we used a network setup kit to then link these two together. So this is essentially connected to the controller, and we now have wireless access to 32 channels. Super nice. It's like a very nice, easy to set up wireless P2P network, point to point, which is going to be very helpful. Now, I did go ahead and rearrange these a little bit differently. I put this to the back and I have this in the center. You can rearrange these however you want, but we do have to make sure that we keep our channels connected correctly, and we are not going to cross our cables. So we have 32 to play with, and a good way to sort of show this is by using a DINS cable, for example, connected here, like that, and this has 32 channels. You can see it right there, and then we can go ahead and connect it off of this, which, by the way, this is a basic Fluix version, and then we have colored. Something to note about two different colored cables, they won't connect, but colored cables will connect to basic Fluix, so these will connect, you can see right here. So, how am I going to use this? All right, so here's where the fun sort of happens. I'm going to run these two side cables back here, and they are going to connect to the pattern provider on the back side. And then what we're going to do, those are going to take up a full 8 channels, which is all that these regular smart cables can hold. But this can hold 32 channels. So I'm able to run separate bridges of 8 off the sides of these, and we are even going to have still 8 channels to play with, plus a couple more channels based off of the ones that are here, like 4 more channels to play with on this main line. So yeah, this doesn't even utilize all of the 32 we have access to. I've just got to get this run into all of these. And as soon as we do, this will all be connected to the main storage. Oh, it's so good. Now I'm using this as an example to also kind of show off how you can use your cable management and make sure you don't connect things. So you can also use cable anchors, and cable anchors will prevent these cables from connecting to one another. So you can also keep your cables separate that way. And we're going to need a cable connector here and here. Both of them, as you can see, will prevent these channels from intersecting, and that's going to be used. We're definitely going to need that. And I'm also going to place them right here just to kind of demonstrate, like I said, that we can keep our channels from crossing. Now that we have these all connected in, we can really start to see how the channel system works. You can see this is 8 channels completely filled, 8 channels completely filled, which, by the way, the pattern providers are what's using the channels. And you can see there's 4 of 8 being used here from all of these. And then in total, we're using 20 of our allotted 32 that are connected here on this cable. Now I could connect another cable on the other side, but I'm still only going to have a total of 32 channels to access. And we would have to do the math in that case because the wireless connector doesn't show how many channels it has available. Just assume that it is a portal that is essentially touching the side of the controller, and that controller is now being directly accessed here. And here's where things actually start to come into play. So I now have my pattern encoding terminal here, and we also have the pattern access terminal, which allows us to see all of our molecular assemblers. Well, not molecular assemblers. Let's just see all of our pattern providers that are attached to the network. And so I can just start to place inside of all of these slots our patterns. And one of the best patterns to make early game, and one of the first patterns I always love to make, is the Applied Energistics pattern. So why not auto-craft patterns? Let that be the first thing that gets crafted. So first we do have to craft by hand a pattern. So now we have the patterns, and we place that in, and then we have the ability to then craft. Oh, and this opens up all kinds of possibilities, including stone cutting and smithing right off the bat. Because stone cutting and smithing templates, these right here, they just go into the regular pattern providers that are connected to assemblers that we just set up. And so anything that has a stone cutting recipe can be done here. So with that pattern made, we can just simply put the pattern in here, and now we have the ability to craft this. A couple of things to note whenever I do craft this, right? Notice how there are 10 in here, and if you want to craft more, you middle mouse click to select the amount that you want to craft more. Another little tip too, whenever you're doing this interface and you interact with this, you can do math directly in here. So let's say you want 4 of a certain amount of items and you have like 6 machines it needs to go into, you can times that by 6. It will automatically do the math and then will request them. Notice, by the way, that we are now out of ingredients, and that's because we didn't actually prep up the other items that are required for the patterns. So we did not autocraft this or any of the other processes like converting into Certus dust. These are all things that I'm going to end up needing to do, but I just wanted to make that clear that there is a lot of steps and every step has to be set up. But once it is set up, it will automatically craft this when it is requested. So if I, for example, say I want 10 more, it does say that we have the quartz glass available, but if I remove the quartz glass and I then do patterns, it will then need to craft. So it says to craft, and it's going to automatically show you here all of the stuff. It's going to automatically select a CPU, but you can go through here and select yourself. Notice where it says storage, that was at 16K we put in. And you're going to notice the bytes that are going to be used to store the crafting plan. So you have to keep this in mind. If you do request too many items, you may exceed your storage capacity. And in that case, you would then probably want to start upgrading your storages on that, either by adding more to the multi-block or to just make larger capacity blocks. Now, I'm going to be doing quite a bit of the auto crafting, but this is just for regular crafts. Like, for example, crafting oak logs into planks and things like that. That is all handled with these molecular assemblers. These can all also receive speed upgrades with acceleration cards to make them even faster. However, you do not upgrade the pattern providers. Those do not get the upgrade. What is actually crafting is the assemblers. So just, yeah, a lot of things to note. Now, this is, like I said, just for regular crafting, but let's talk about processing, because that is where I find the auto crafting to be the most powerful. So let's go ahead and now automate with a processing pattern the two machines that we made last episode, and that is the circuit slicer and the crystal assembler. These both have like several uses, but for right now, we're just going to focus on just making our basic processing patterns, which are used throughout all of AE. So to be able to set this up, there's a couple of configs that we're going to need to change, but just keep in mind, we're going to have a pattern provider here, and these are going to get crafted on top of this. Now, the crystal assembler, I'm not quite sure if it can work just on the bottom, because I'm not sure where the auto export happens here, but the circuit slicer, now this one's a little bit different because we actually need this to be rotated on its side on this connection port right here. So I have my configurator, I hit in, and I can access the wrench, so that way I can rotate this around. I'm going to rotate it till one of these faces are connected here, and then rotate it down so it's facing like so. And I do know that it will power it from this position, and the pattern provider should power the circuit slicer, and the pattern provider, once connected, should also power the other side over here. And so after a little bit of testing, yes, both of these do work. You need to make sure that you have the auto export turned on, where it says the produced items will be auto exported through any extraction side, and this one right here. Now, the reason this is turned on its side mostly is due to the power access ports. If it doesn't have one on the side, well, it will not receive the power, but it does receive power on these sides. So I have it nice and rotated. Beautiful. So both of them are receiving power, both of them work, and both of them are auto sending back into the pattern provider. And that's one of the powerful parts of the pattern provider and auto crafting is a machine can receive items from the pattern provider, and then it can send it back. The machine can send it back into the pattern provider, thus completing the auto craft and sending it right back into your system. Now, interesting, contrary to actually what the information says in the slicer's guide, I did also test just setting it up normal like this, and it also receives now power from here. Maybe this is only receiving power from like external things for like RF. So it does receive power also from the bottom. So it probably just doesn't receive it from these glass faces. Didn't really realize it does it from the bottom, but it does. And the auto export also works from the bottom. So you can just place it right on top of the pattern provider. I also raise this up off the ground just so we can visually see the pattern providers. I don't know, I think this looks kind of nice. And this is going to allow us to build patterns for all of our circuits. Now, along with all of this auto crafting, there's a couple of other cool tools that you can utilize when auto crafting with something like Applied Energistics. This also works for refined storage, but you can hold control if you don't have an item for a recipe when you're just regular crafting, and it will allow this to be crafted if you have a crafting pattern for it. So if I'm, for example, in my regular terminal, let's go ahead and craft this pattern modifier, which we're going to be using. I can go ahead and request crafts for items that I don't have. I'm running out of glowstone right now, but for example, you've seen it pulled up that screen, which is very handy. But there we go, pattern modifier. The pattern modifier is such a cool tool, and is going to become your friend, especially whenever you start auto crafting things like we're about to do. So we now need to make processing patterns. First though, we're going to make regular crafting patterns. So let me go ahead and get into my pattern grid, and we need to take a look here at the Applied Energistics processors. And we need to go ahead and get this set up, right? So we need to craft just a regular block of these materials and have them on autocraft. So like the silicon, a block of it. This is just going to go into our regular pattern provider. Diamonds, block of diamonds, so on and so forth. So when inserting into your molecular assembler stack, I recommend going from the left side down. It's just going to be a little bit more efficient in how it spreads out your patterns across your assemblers. But now for the fun part is where we actually build this recipe for the slicer. Now the slicer recipe is straightforward. We just need to use the regular pattern, and you see it switch to processing. And so now we have this Certus that will then get crafted and converted into this. And we need to do this for each individual type. And it's nice that we can just click on the one that we want to do on the slicer. There we go, send it over, and also on this one. Perfect. Now those are going to end up going into the slicer. So we can either take it over to the slicer, or we can access our slicer right here from this terminal, which makes it nice and convenient being able to access this. Now we don't need to make any changes for the slicer, but I think we can use the pattern modifier potentially for the next task. So if we open this terminal up, we can go ahead and go to the processing. We're going to use the crystal assembler here, and this is going to automatically pull the 4 and 4 in. We don't have to go with the 4. I think it actually might be very useful to do this in this pattern way. But something that I want to show you that you can do is by opening your pattern modifier, putting your pattern in here, you can actually like multiply that by 2. And now it went from 4 to now 8. And this is useful for certain tasks. For example, like furnaces that may be super fast. You might want to have 64 cent per crafting operation, or something like that, right? And so this would help in that regard. As of right now, we're just going to stick with 4. I just wanted to show this off. You can also, if you build a bunch of patterns and they're temporary, you can toss them in here and clear them all with one button. That's actually a super, super nice way of doing it. And I think there's also a combine mode as well, or a replace. So you can copy patterns. There's all kinds of cool things you can do with this, like multiply, replace, and clone. So yeah, very neat. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. All those little cool tools I really, really love. But we are making processors. Oh man, this has got to be one of the simplest processing production methods I have ever set up, because this is it. So we just need to go over here, or we could have accessed it from the other terminal, slap these in, and these are now ready to craft. If I want to make 10 or 9, which would be a nice rounded number, it's going to request these, but it's going to give us 12. Even though I requested 9, it's going to give us 12 because of the way we have them formatted. But some other setting that I definitely recommend checking is to set this to blocking mode potentially, or to set this to leave it off of blocking mode, right? Just leave it off and set it to lock crafting. No, wait, it needs to be set to, where's it at? Lock crafting until primary result is returned. That is something that I would recommend, not necessarily for the circuit slicer, but possibly for the assembler, because I'm not quite sure how everything is handled here. We can just leave it as default, which would not be too bad. I can kind of try this out, leave it to never, which is, by the way, the default, and just sort of try it. Let's just see what happens when we request like 10. This is, of course, going to send those ingredients in, but what I'm worried about is it sending more than one item in. Also, we need to make sure that's set, and there we go. Autocraft is done. I mean, that was it. That was literally making circuits. It's so simple with these two machines. It's never been easier to craft circuits. However, it did require a little bit of work to get here. But still, if you're actively learning Applied Energistics and, well, you are doing that because you don't have refined storage at the moment, well, I hope you have had fun so far, because you're going to really discover the power of AE. Now remember as well, there are crafts that can accept fluids, And the pattern provider can also handle fluids and all of that being sent into here as well. So just something to note when we work on some other things, like for example, I don't know, the reaction chamber automation. I think that should be something we also have a pattern for. Now, some other really good things to automate is definitely one inscriber, so that way we can get these basic dusts sort of produced. These just need to go in here, and we need to make sure on this it just is set to auto export. Nothing else really needs to be done. The only thing that would be maybe good is to have this set to 32, and we can do that with that pattern upgrader if it becomes an issue. Because as of right now, it's just going to send one in, even though it can hold up to 64. And there is, by the way, an extended version of this inscriber, which can do 4 stacks essentially at a time, or 4 separate operations at a time. Now, for this reaction chamber, which is pretty cool for example, duplicating like our intro dust and stuff like that. What we're going to need for this is this just to set to export, but this has a cool button down here that lets you like turn off every side that you don't want it to auto output to, which I think is kind of a neat little concept. And making sure that the only side, for example, that we have it going to is this. So if you have like multiple machines next to each other, honestly, that should be a default feature of the inscriber, because this has that very problem where if these are next to each other in a certain configuration, it'll auto output into another inscriber. Now let's see some of this auto craft in action. I want to actually craft up a 64K fluid cell, and this is going to hold water that I'm going to be collecting with an annihilation plane, so that way we have water in our storage. And we should also be able to have lava also in our storage, because we do have access to our lava over here. So I should be able to entangle another block, and we can have an importer import lava into the system. So maybe we need 2 of these fluid storage cells. That could be nice. And that way we have both lava and we have water for autocrafts. And it does look like I have enough resources, yeah, to go ahead and actually request 2 fluid 64K discs. And by the way, if you're wondering how the operations are going, you can click the crafting status up here and you can actually see all of the processes happening. And that happened incredibly quick, especially for 64Ks. And what I want to do now is I just want to have them inside of one of our drives. I can put them in the bottom here. I think that looks kind of nice. Priority we shouldn't have to worry about, because there's nowhere else in our system for fluids to go. However, we want to define these fluid cells, and this can hold 18 types of fluid, but I really just want this one to hold water and this one to hold lava. How do I do that? Well, there's actually a way we can do that. And I'm super glad you asked, because it allows me to show off the cell workbench. So our cell workbench, we can go ahead and place down. There's nothing really required, like special about this thing. So it doesn't need power or anything. It just needs to go in here, and it opens up a bunch of different slots that we can then filter this by. Pretty darn cool. And we can also add upgrade cards. For example, overflow destruction. We also have like equal distribution cards, some interesting things, and inverters. All kinds of cool little slots that we put in here. I'm assuming inverter would be like changing this from a whitelist to a blacklist, because by default, this acts as a whitelist. So if we pull up regular water, I can drag water into this cell, and now this cell is formatted to water. And then on this one, I can do lava, and this cell will now be formatted to lava. Very, very nice. And then this can go back in here, giving both water and lava a place to go. Now for water, just like we had done before, I'm going to be utilizing an annihilation plane, but this time it's not going to be on a sub network. It's going to be on our main network. So there's no real need for us to worry about anything right now. So long as we don't put a block right here, we should be fine. Let me go ahead and get back down here real quick. So I'm going to be filling these 2 slots with water. And that means the water is going to end up right here. And I can cover this up for right now. I'm just going to leave it. But if we grab buckets of water, a couple of them, we can just place them right here. And that will give this an infinite water source to draw from. And because we have those cells, it's going to allow this to work. Because without those cells, it would have nowhere to go. So you wouldn't actually see this working. But this right here is effectively storing water inside of that water cell because we gave it somewhere to go. Very, very useful, and we can now see all of those buckets being inserted. Now, the other cool part is that will actually stop when the water is filled. So yes, you can actually also double the rate of this by adding another annihilation plane, for example, on the other side. Now, for inserting the lava, that one's also pretty straightforward. I still have the block entangled from when we entangled this with lava. So there we go. We have access to that pump. And then I'm just going to use an importer on the bottom of this, connected right on in, just like that. And lava should now be importing, and we should be able to see that, importing directly into our cell. So perfect. Yeah, just like that. Acceleration cards will make this faster, but I think just leaving it as it is going to be more than fine. Now, I know you're probably screaming at your monitor right now and going, Chosen, there's an unlimited cobble and water card or cell that you can actually use instead of this method. Well, I would, but it's actually kind of expensive in this pack, and requires you to go all the way up to stainless steel at the moment of me playing, all the way up to stainless steel in Modernization Industrialization, which is quite extensive into that particular mod. And just something that, yeah, would take a long time to actually get to. But talking to AK, that might actually get changed in the future. So if you're watching this in the future, go ahead and check and see if that recipe has been changed, because that would be a very nice way of actually doing it if you could just simply craft that card. Cutting down tremendously on the amount of chunk updates that have to happen every time that the water gets consumed here. So now I should be able to make charged Certus quartz quite easily. So let's pull up the pattern real quick. And inside of the reaction chamber from Advanced AE, it takes water in the craft, which will auto pull up in here. Regular Certus, we connect that in, and we then build the recipe just like so. So perfect. So now we have water crafting, lava crafting, all of that fun stuff. And I should be able to make charged Certus quartz just like so. It tossed it in there. Ooh, it does not receive power from our device here. So this one actually might need a gate. For some reason, it does not seem like it is receiving power. Just like that, though. And now it is receiving power. So this does need external power source, it looks like. Or maybe something's just not connected right. But either way, beautiful. Now, I also got my crystal automation up and running as well. I still, though, need to make, I think, the advanced version of the block breaker, and that will allow me to charge my pickaxe inside of it. So that would be fantastic. That way I can make an auto smelting pickaxe specifically for this purpose. But everything is now being collected down at the bottom, just like that, just like we had. I've just essentially made it faster. So these are all being stored in here, including Certus, silicon, and amethyst, all from this little farm where I just have these set up vertically and I'm powering them all from the sides. So I also decided to play around a little bit with ours, and we're going to go on a little bit of an adventure, and I want to try and use my spells on some enemies. And so I was noticing while I was looking around in here, just under tier 2, because we don't have tier 3 unlocked just yet, but we will soon. But for right now, I noticed Spike because it's like the only animated one in here. And I was like, you know what? This is from Ars Elemental, and I don't remember this one. I wanted to try this out. This requires netherite, so I crafted it up. And this thing is actually insane. So let me explain. So if I go down into this spell right here, essentially what we have going for us is we can build a projectile or a ray spell. Doesn't really matter. Ray is just sort of like instant where it hits the mob. But we have a ray spell. I'm just going to use this for now. I think it does use more mana. We're going to hit a spike. And this is kind of interesting. Whenever it hits the target, it does this, right? It spawns this little thing right here. And notice it just did 2 hearts of damage to me with just 1. And I am in protection gear, like a really high protection gear. So I'm trying to figure out, like, how could I set this up? And it's got a really short duration. I tried extending the time on it. It doesn't really work that well to extend the time. What actually does well is to cast it multiple times on your target. So to be able to use it multiple times on a target, well, you could just add more of them to it. And that's actually pretty powerful in itself. If we do this, we're going to notice that it does it all in one go, and that's not exactly what we want. Instead, we want to use the power of delay and delay them in between, and we can get quite a few of them on here. So now it's going to continue spiking while that goes on. That's pretty neat in itself. But you can actually augment this even further by applying Pierce. For example, you can put Pierce on this. And I don't know if Pierce... Oh man, Pierce does even more damage. So it did 2.5 hearts. And I don't know if this goes straight through your gear. It does tell you a little bit about this. Pierce will make it wider or taller, AoE and Pierce. So I guess you can make Pierce to potentially make it taller. Yes, Pierce makes it specifically taller. Doesn't really do any more damage, it doesn't seem like. And it looks like AoE makes it wider, so you get like a chunkier version of it. I think the combination of AoE and Amplify is pretty good. And you can hit it with a delay, making it a little bit bigger like that, just enough to cover the entirety of the block. I think that would be pretty nice, making sure it traps a mob that we hit. The delay is going to delay the interaction between the spikes. So we hit it with a delay, and then we do the same thing. We do that, another AoE, and that. We hit that with a delay, and then just to finish it up, we'll just do a regular spike. So when this is cast, it's going to spike 3 times and hit with a small spike. And this is a very powerful spell. Just for me playing around with this on some mobs that are down here, it just basically insta-kills them. I don't even know how to describe it outside of it just destroys them. It's so quick too. Now you have to make sure that they're actually walking on it, and it does seem like it does struggle sometimes with that. But if it's just a stationary mob, it's going to annihilate them. And so this could be, for example, added to a sword where you get a bonus amplify on it. So the last one would be even stronger as well. So the combination of all of these, could be really cool. But I want to take this spell and I want to go on a little bit of an adventure. I do have the ability to use my Void Staff to basically fly all over the place. There's some really cool biomes, and I have yet to explore like all of these biomes. I really want to see like what is up with stuff like this. There's like random stuff all over the place. Oh man, there's loot right here. And there could be something special that we actually don't have that we could find. That would help us in our journey. I think this is like suspicious sand, or the area where you would find suspicious sand, because there are pots. And if you find pots, there's probably going to be suspicious sand nearby. Oh, I think the best place to test it on has got to be this ship. And this is just one of several ships, but let's get this spawner to spawn. This illusioner spawner is not spawning. Maybe it's because it has spawned and it's on a delay. Oh, I think this was the ship. Oh yeah, that we went to. So let's test this out. Oh my gosh, it just annihilates these guys. Oh, that is ridiculous. Okay, here we go. Hit that guy. So it has to hit them. And sometimes it doesn't, but man, if you cast multiple on them, they just get wrecked. That's absolute, what an insane spell. And it feels so early to get that as well. Like, we can use it on them. Sometimes, it, like I said, it seems like it doesn't hit them. Were you going to burn down the ship? Let's make sure I attack them and not the ground. There we go. It finally took them out. Yeah, I think its accuracy is definitely hindered. That is one of the biggest problems with this. Looks like they lit themselves on fire. Oh, I love this. Yeah, when they just stand still, ooh, that'd be, you know what? We could actually make a spell that forces them to stay still. I think there's still some bad guys in here, but I should definitely free the villagers. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Yeah, let's actually modify this spell a little bit. So what if I, for example, hit this with maybe a freeze instead? So hear me out. So we do a ray cast, and then we do a freeze. This is going to lock them in place for a little bit of a duration. Then we hit them with the spike. Maybe this all happens at the same time. Actually, we might need a delay between the freeze and the spike. Then we don't even need the AoE. We just do raw damage, and we just do the amplify delays like this. So now we have a ray, freeze, delay, spike, amplify, delay, spike, amplify, delay. This is going to be a killer spell. Oh man, this is going to definitely do some damage. Especially with that initial freeze, which should lock them in place. Now it feels like, is there an underside to this? There definitely is. For example, this guy right here. He gets frozen and then gets taken down. Oh, that's a very, very deadly spell. Okay. Yeah, this is way more powerful than I originally thought it was going to be, and I should definitely do more testing. By the way, I have made it into what looks like to be a secret area. There's supposed to be illusioners that spawn here, but I think I got lucky with, for some reason, the spawner's not spawning anything at the moment. Ooh, there is some goods in here. Okay. I'll take it. Okay. Is there anything special like underneath the captain's chair? Oh, there's not. I wonder if there's any more secrets hidden in this area though. All right, so we've definitely got to test it on these guys. Like this is probably one of the craziest use cases for this. These guys are already standing still. So I think the ray has limited range, but look at that. Bam, 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 bam. Oh my gosh. And people would say ours is not powerful. Actually, I don't know if anybody's ever said that. The fact that these guys are already frozen is just absurd, but these guys are not. These are Vindicators. So the freeze doesn't fully freeze them in place. I know there is there is a rune that should do that, so maybe it's not freeze. That's why I said it's definitely worth testing. Ah, that's right. It's not freeze, it's snare. Snare's the one that holds them in place. Right, so instead of a snare, or instead of a freeze, we use a snare. There. Okay, perfect. So the same spell sort of exists, except for now they get snared in place. So I'm back on the ship to try this out. Of course, we're not going to see the snare happen there, but on these guys who pop out of that spawner eventually, we should see it. I have to break that spawner, but these are Vindicators. I mean, we are fine to break those spawners, but still, oh man, it's just so powerful. They get snared, they can't move, and then the spike takes them out. That is, like, they shouldn't be able to move at all. Okay, here we go. Now is the moment of truth. Okay, let's get them out of here. We'll notice, like, they'll just be stopped in place. Oh, that is so... Okay. Very nice. Okay, I'm definitely going to be able to find more of these. I'm just going to go ahead and break it so I can see what's in the chest. Oh, that was actually... I was probably better off just keeping the spawner, to be fair. Now, there are some hidden chests that are back here, but yeah, just iron and such. Man, this would be an easy ship to kind of just loot the back of and walk up in because nothing's going to attack you down here, and you get early access to iron. I still think that, like, looting an ocean is the best way to get started in most mod packs now. Now, back to testing this out. Here's a skeleton, for example. Snared, dead. Snared, dead. They can still shoot you, but yeah, they're getting two-shot by the spikes. That's so good. Not even gonna move. So now I'm thinking about going a mano with another fellow wizard, and well, I think I have an advantage against this guy. Even though this guy could technically wreck me, I don't know. I have a feeling that I am going to be able to conquer this other wizard. Hello, fellow wizard. Ah, yes, you going to summon the thing. Oh, well, that's not fair. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Is that him? Aha, there it is. You stand no chance against me. I am the god of the wizards. Oh, that's so good. And he just got shredded. Absolutely shredded. It was not even a chance. The only chance it had was, I mean, just being able to go invisible. But, I mean, we do have some loot here. I'll take a goat horn. Very nice. Ooh, it's the ponder one. Very, very nice. Some more cobwebs, and we have more stuff. Ooh, the summon horse is so nice. It's such a fast horse. And bottles of enchanting. Just some common stuff that we actually already have a bit of, and there's also one back here as well. Now, I definitely should have captured this guy and probably put him in a Drigme jar, but you know what? I'm bound to find another one of these structures when we go adventuring again. Also, by the way, if you wanted to know, I changed my light spell to an extend time self. This is what's giving me the night vision. Very cool. Now, I think the perfect name for this is Dali. Oh man, if you know, you know. Definitely an Avatar reference. As I mean, essentially with that spell, we're earthbending. Oh, how good. But with that, I think I'm going to have to wrap up today's episode. We're going to be doing a bit more exploring very, very soon. Now that I have a powerful ability that can just like two-tap so many things, we can definitely do a bit more exploring without the fear of dying as much. But I hope you guys did enjoy today's episode. Hopefully you learned something new about Applied Energistics or about Ars Nouveau with some spell theory crafting, which I'm going to have to do some more of that very, very soon. But if you did, give this video a huge thumbs up. Click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and comment down below maybe some of your own spell recipes. I would love to hear about those down in the comments, and maybe some of your favorite spell combos can get implemented into the videos. I would really love to try some of them out. So let me know. I'm also going to ask on the community page, like, what's some of your favorite Ars Nouveau spell combos? Oh, that's going to be so cool to see. But anyways, thank you so much, and it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to the original Pokemon. Thank you so much for your amazing support in choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Guys, I look forward to, of course, seeing you in the next episode, and you by this point know how it goes. As always, thanks for watching. Bye!